Hi, I'm David Domke. I'm chair of the Department of Communication here at the University of Washington. One of the best things about my job is the chance to talk with alumni and students, faculty, staff, every once in a while about work that they're doing or memories that they have or things that they're committed to. Today I'm joined by an inductee of the 2015 Alumni Hall of Fame for the Department of Communication, George Walker. This is our Chats with the Chair with George Walker. Thanks for joining me, George.
My pleasure to be here, Dave.
You're a 1948 alum of what was then the School of Communications. Is that right? What was your dream job coming out of college?
Well, my dream college going into college was to, number one, be the ace advertisement salesman of the Northwest. And secondly, if that didn't work out, I wanted to be the best reporter in the Northwest. And I felt with the fine education I'd had out here, I was qualified for either job. However, that was during the Korean War, and we had a business downturn, if that sounds familiar to you.
Yeah.
And all I did was go from door to door and mail out resumes and have people say, no, nothing now. Or they wanted to say, what experience do you have? Well, I just got out of journalism school at the University of Washington and have specialized in advertising as well and do all these good things. No, we just hire people that have advertising here. So one day I was walking down the hall in the old, I think it was the Stevens building, with the old journalism school building, and I walked by, and it was in the summer, and a voice out of one of the offices came out and said, George, how are things going? And I said, George, they're going terrible, to tell you the truth.
Oh, no.
And I said, I've been walking the streets and putting out resumes and everything else, and I haven't even got a resume back, and I've only had about 3 interviews. And everybody that's interviewed me wants somebody with experience. And I said, I'm really in hard times on that, I said. And he said, I'll tell you how to fix it. Now, this man taught in the school about 2 days a week and had a downtown advertising, very successful the rest of the time. And he said, well, I'll tell you what you do. He said, you see that phone book over there? And I said, yeah, big phone book. He says, you know, over half of that's yellow pages. And I said, yes. And he said, it's advertising in there. And I said, yes, I know. And he said, it goes from A to Z. Now, you know all about A to Z because they taught you that at the University of Washington Journalism School, if you didn't know A to Z, with all the various courses. I said, well, that's what I was doing the first 2 years, was going to courses from A to Z. He said, okay, so you know that. He said, the second thing is when you sell or design yellow page advertising for the phone books, he said, it's going to have a very small space. It has to be very effective. It has to last for a year. And he said, it's a lot more difficult than making full page grocery ads up that you were probably trained to do. I said, I understand all that. He said, well, the last thing is they do a lousy job of it, and I think if you go down there, they'll hire you.
Okay.
So I went down to the telephone company who at that time printed all the yellow pages, put my name in with all these wonderful qualifications, and they said, fine, we'll hire you. And I worked for the Bell system for the next 45 years.
Yeah. Wow, that's a great story. It's a great story. Did you grow up in Seattle?
Yes, I did.
What high school did you go to?
I went to Queen Anne High School, West Queen Anne Grade School. I could see them all out here. I could see this out here, and we're all still here, all 3 schools.
Yeah. And what was a kind of something you might remember from being at the UW in your time here? What was a thing that you might particularly recall from that time? Parties or fun or classes or fraternities or things like, whatever.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing I do remember and I think of very often, Edward R. Murrow came and visited. And at that time, the journalism fraternity was Sigma Delta Chi. I don't know if
No, it
that's
still is, yeah.
Still is.
Yeah,
And there were about 12 of us in it, and we sat in a lounge room for 2 hours with Edward R. Murrow, had just come back from Europe and World War II, and talking about what it took to be a good reporter and what you did if you were a good reporter. And he was a very impressive man. There wasn't a quiver in the room listening to him for 2 hours. Now, the only negative I noticed, he smoked cigarettes continually and never stopped from the beginning to end, and died of lung cancer
Sure.
later on. But that's the one thing I really think of thinking about here, as well as the dean of the school was Vernon Frost at that time, was a very impressive man. And they had a lot of people who had either they'd been reporters on the Portland Oregonian, or they'd had advertising agencies, or they owned papers. We had 2 or 3 of the faculty that owned weeklies here and
interesting.
there, which I don't know whether anybody does that these days, but it was kind of like halfway being in the real world. So that is the one thing I always remember, those people by names. I can still see them. So
Yeah. And so what was a really great part about the work you were able to do at the telephone company?
the work that I did at the telephone company for the next 45 years was one thing. The telephone company here was the Pacific Telephone and Telegraph, and later U.S. West. And it was part of the Bell system. And the Bell system was put together by Alexander Graham Bell, who invented the telephone by mistake when he was working in his laboratory in the late 1800s, trying to devise a hearing device for children. And he was dedicated to that. So after he invented the telephone and this great communication empire and all this money, he wanted everybody that worked for it, and it was every state in the union and New York as well, to give their employees much time to work in the field, and to make contributions to whatever their charity is that they might, the Boy Scouts or the YMCA or whatever it might be. And that didn't matter whether it was the manager or the telephone operator or somebody that climbed poles. They would be supported by the company in community activities.
Yeah.
And that's what I really liked, as well as liking my job, was the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, you have worked, or worked maybe might not be the best word. You have been part of, contributed, invested in so many different community organizations in your years here in Seattle. Has there been a kind of philosophy undergirding that, like a kind of that, hey, I think it's important to give back to the community, or have there been particular values you've wanted to put forward in that work?
Yes, there was, and I started out, as I said, after I had selling Yellow Pages, and I ended up, and I retired. I was the vice president and CEO for the Northwest and Washington in particular. And the thing I think that came to me the most with that was that I wanted to see that spread through the rest of the community and other people, and helping them in other businesses to do that, and convincing them that at that time we had lots of headquarters here, from Safeco to Bank of America, so on and on. And we started losing the headquarters business that we had, and we were practically down to Boeing, and we tried to get people to work to get their companies to do that type of thing. I started out just with the Yellow Pages, and when I retired, which was 20 years ago, I had a monthly budget of $4 million that we put out in charity, and we had 16,000 employees at that time, and encouraged all of them to get out and work in the community.
Maybe one last question. We are thrilled to have you coming into the Alumni Hall of Fame. The way that we do this is that people who are in the Hall of Fame get a chance to vote and to talk to us about the nominees. We also solicit input from the faculty and staff here. And there were a good number of people that were advocating on your behalf, George. If there's one thing that you've tried to kind of live out as a person, as a citizen and as a professional, one thing that if you thought, hey, this is what I've strived to be known for, what would that be?
Well, I think it would be strive to be known for my activities in the community, from the president of the Chamber of Commerce and a long list of things, and met a lot of people that I enjoyed working with. I believe Neil McReynolds is on one of your years out there on that chart.
Sure is.
And Neil was tough to keep up with because he was involved in everything plus 2 or 3, and I could just be involved in everything. I didn't get the 2 or 3. And Neil, of course, is a couple of years in age from my age, but he's still going strong.
Sure.
And Joanne Harrell was worked for me for a number of years, and then she got promoted. We traveled the country together promoting different good causes, and then Joanne, as you know, went on to doing what she's doing now.
Oh, yeah.
She's, as I recall, on the Board of Regents, the last I knew, working out in Microsoft and all. But it gives you something nice to see these people that just entered out of college and were as frustrated as I was, to see them grow where they're a real power in the community.
Yeah, it's funny what you say about Neil. Some friendly kind of competition or measurement there that you two had there. But you always think the other person's doing more than you, right? So you got to elevate your work, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's really an honor for us to have you in our Hall of Fame and to have your name on our wall of recognition, Mr. Walker. And I'm just thrilled to have this chance to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm David Domke. This has been a chat with the chair. I'm the chair of the communication department here at the University of Washington. Been talking to one of our 2015 Alumni Hall of Fame inductees, George Walker. Thanks for joining us.